In a grand room filled with bright lights, the Galactic Council gathered to discuss a dangerous threat. Representatives from various alien races sat at a large round table, their faces serious. The Council was worried about a strong alien race known as the Zari, who had been attacking planets without mercy. These aliens had advanced technology and a ruthless reputation. The atmosphere in the room was tense, filled with unease and urgency. Council leader Zari, a tall figure with blue skin and sharp features, spoke first. The Zari are growing stronger. If we do not act quickly, they will destroy our colonies. We must unite against them! His voice echoed in the chamber, causing murmurs among the members. The representatives nodded, but there were also voices of doubt. We should not waste resources on Earth, said Grix, a small green creature with many eyes. They are too weak to help us in this fight. We have always done well on our own. Zyrak frowned. We cannot underestimate humanity. They may have their flaws, but they are resourceful and brave. We need every ally we can find. The debate grew heated. Some members argued that Earth should be ignored, while others insisted on including them in the fight. Meanwhile, a human spy named Alex sat quietly in the corner of the room. He was listening closely, taking in every word. Alex knew the Council was making a big mistake by underestimating humanity. As the discussions continued, Alex's heart raced. He had come to the Council hoping to convince them of humanity's strength, but they were stubborn. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang through the chamber, interrupting the meeting. A holographic screen lit up, displaying a warning message. Alert! Zalari ships detected near the human colony of New Hope. The message flashed in bright red letters. Panic spread through the Council as they realized the danger. Zyrak quickly ordered everyone to focus. We must prepare a defense. The Zalari cannot be allowed to attack Earth. Outside the chamber, the situation was chaotic. Council members rushed to their ships, shouting orders and organizing a plan to protect Earth. But Alex knew they were too late. The Zalari were already on their way, and the Council was not ready for what was coming. In a hidden base on Earth, the leaders of humanity were preparing for their own battle. Commander Sarah Lee, a skilled and determined leader, stood in front of a large screen displaying the fleet. We have to act now! The Council may not believe in us, but we know what we are capable of. Let's show them! Her team of officers nodded in agreement. They had spent years preparing for this moment, knowing that Earth could be attacked at any time. Now they had to respond quickly. Launch the ships! We must protect New Hope before it is too late, Sarah commanded. The human fleet took off into space, a mix of old and new ships flying in formation. Each ship was equipped with advanced technology, and the crew members were ready to fight. As they flew through the stars, Sarah felt a sense of determination. They would not let the Zalari take their home. Back in the Galactic Council, confusion spread. What are the humans doing? They are not supposed to engage the enemy without our permission, one representative shouted. Zyrak sighed. We cannot control them. They are making their own choices. But deep down, he wondered if the Council had made the right decision in underestimating humanity. As the human fleet approached New Hope, they could see the Zalari ships in the distance. They were massive and intimidating, black against the backdrop of the stars. Sarah's heart raced, but she steeled herself for battle. This is it. We fight for our colony and for humanity's place in the galaxy, she declared. The human ships moved into formation, ready to defend their home. They would show the Galactic Council and the Zalari what humanity was truly capable of. The storm was gathering, and the battle for Earth was about to begin. As the human fleet approached the colony of New Hope, a tense silence fell over the bridge of the flagship, USS Valor. Commander Sarah Lee stood at the center, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen. The sight of the Zalari ships, massive and menacing, sent a shiver down her spine. They were here and they were ready to fight. Status report! Sarah called, her voice steady but filled with urgency. Sir, we have detected multiple Zalari ships entering the atmosphere. They are preparing to attack the colony. Lieutenant Mark Anderson, a young but skilled officer, replied. He was tapping furiously on his console, trying to gather as much information as possible. Divert all power to shields and weapons. We need to protect the colony at all costs, Sarah ordered. Her team sprang into action, their faces determined. They knew what was at stake. Meanwhile, on the surface of New Hope, chaos reigned. Citizens ran for cover as the dark shadows of Zalari ships loomed overhead. The warning sirens blared, and people hurried to underground shelters, fearing the worst. The local defense force tried to mobilize, but they were outmatched and outgunned. Back on the USS Valor, Sarah's team worked swiftly to execute their plan. "We will engage the enemy head-on," she decided. "We have to draw their fire away from the colony." Her officers nodded, understanding the risks involved. They knew that by putting themselves in danger, they could buy time for the civilians to escape. "We need to form a defensive line." "Bring the fleet into formation," Mark shouted, rallying his crew. The human ships moved as one, their engines roaring to life. Sarah felt a surge of pride as she watched her fleet take shape. They were united, ready to protect their home. "All ships, prepare for engagement," she commanded. As they entered combat range, the Zari ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the dark space. Laser blasts streaked through the void, but the human fleet held firm. The USS Valor absorbed the impact, the shields glowing bright as they took the hits. "Return fire!" Sarah shouted, her voice filled with resolve. The human ships unleashed a barrage of missiles and energy blasts. The explosions lit up the darkness, and for a moment, hope surged in Sarah's heart. The battle raged on. Human ships fought bravely against the Zari forces, showing courage and skill. Mark expertly guided their ship through enemy fire, dodging blasts and counterattacking with precision. Each successful hit sent a wave of cheers through the crew. "Commander, we are taking heavy fire," another officer warned. Sarah's heart raced as she saw one of their ships get hit, spiraling out of control. "Get them out of there! Cover them with our shields!" she ordered. Just as the tide seemed to turn in their favor, a huge Zari flagship emerged from behind the clouds. It dwarfed everything around it, its dark hull bristling with weapons. The crew fell silent, staring in awe and fear. "Commander, that ship could destroy us all in seconds," Mark said, his voice shaking. Sarah knew they had to act fast. "We have to take down that flagship. If we can do that, we can break their morale." She quickly devised a plan. "We'll use our smaller ships as decoys. They'll draw fire while we focus on the flagship." The crew nodded, inspired by their leader's courage. They quickly communicated the plan to the rest of the fleet. Smaller ships broke away from the main formation, darting around the Zari ships, drawing their attention. "Now's our chance! All weapons, fire at will!" Sarah shouted. The human fleet concentrated their fire on the flagship, a barrage of missiles and energy blasts aimed at the massive vessel. The flagship shuddered under the onslaught, but it did not fall. Instead, it retaliated, unleashing a powerful wave of energy that sent several human ships spiraling away. Sarah gritted her teeth, refusing to back down. "Keep fighting! We can't let them win!" she urged, determination fueling her every word. The human fleet pressed on, and despite the odds, they fought with everything they had. As the battle raged, the Galactic Council monitored the situation from afar, shocked by humanity's unexpected bravery. They had underestimated Earth, and now they were witnessing a fierce response. In the heart of the battle, Sarah Lee and her crew stood strong, united against the overwhelming odds. They would fight for their home, for their people, and for humanity's place in the galaxy. The storm was here, and they were ready to face it head-on. The battle in space raged on, and Commander Sarah Lee stood firm on the bridge of the USS Valor. Her crew was exhausted but determined. They had already lost several ships in the fight against the Zari, but the remaining human fleet was still ready to defend New Hope. The massive Zari flagship loomed before them, a dark titan in the starry void. It had taken damage from their previous attacks, but remained a formidable threat. "Commander, our shields are down to 30%, shouted Lieutenant Mark Anderson, his fingers flying over the control panel. "We can't take much more of this!" Sarah felt her heart race. She knew they needed a plan, and fast. "We can't let fear control us. We have to hit their weak spots," she said, her voice strong despite the chaos around her. "We need to draw their fire away from the flagship." "Agreed," Mark replied, nodding. "But how do we do that?" A plan began to form in Sarah's mind. "We will use our smaller ships to distract the flagship while we aim for its weapons. If we can disable them, we might have a chance." As Sarah explained her plan, the crew listened intently. They knew the risks, but hope glimmered in their hearts. "All right, listen up," Sarah shouted, rallying her team. "We will split into 2 groups. One group will create a diversion, while the other targets the flagship's weapon systems. Let's show them what humanity can do!" The crew sprang into action, their faces set with determination. They communicated with the other ships in their fleet, coordinating the plan. Smaller ships began to dart around the Zari flagship, drawing its fire. Bright laser beams shot out from the flagship, illuminating the darkness of space. "Now fire at will," Sarah commanded. The USS Valor and the other ships targeted the flagship's weapon systems, unleashing a furious barrage of missiles and energy blasts. Explosions rocked the Zari ship as it tried to retaliate. "Direct hit on their main weapon," Mark shouted, excitement in his voice. The crew cheered as the flagship's firing power weakened, but Sarah knew they couldn't celebrate yet. "Stay focused! We need to keep the pressure on!" Suddenly, the flagship began to maneuver, shifting its massive frame to face the attacking ships. "They're targeting our smaller vessels," a crew member yelled. "Protect them! Use our shields to cover them," Sarah ordered, urgency gripping her heart. The human ships quickly moved to form a protective barrier around the smaller vessels. Sarah's mind raced as she scanned the battlefield for any advantage. "Commander, the Zari are regrouping," Mark warned. "They're preparing for a counterattack." Sarah's instincts kicked in. "We need to anticipate their moves. Let's create a diversion again. Have the smaller ships spread out. We'll make them think we're retreating." As the smaller ships scattered, the flagship hesitated, confused by the sudden shift in strategy. The human fleet seized the moment, launching another wave of attacks. The Zari flagship took more hits, and the crew of the USS Valor felt a surge of hope. "Keep it up! We're making progress!" Sarah shouted, urging her crew onward. But as the flagship began to stabilize, Sarah realized the Zari were regrouping for a massive assault. "Brace yourselves!" she yelled, as the flagship unleashed a powerful energy wave, shaking the USS Valor. "Commander, we're losing power! The shields won't hold!" Mark called out, panic in his voice. "Divert all remaining energy to the shields," Sarah ordered, determination in her eyes. "We cannot give up now." The crew fought against the fear that threatened to overwhelm them. They knew they were fighting for their home and for each other. As the energy waves struck, the USS Valor shuddered violently, but the shields held, flickering but intact. "Now, all ships, concentrate fire on that flagship," Sarah commanded, her voice fierce. The fleet rallied, pouring all their firepower into the Zari ship. Explosions erupted across its surface, and for the first time, the Zari flagship seemed to falter. "Direct hits on their power core," Mark exclaimed, disbelief shining in his eyes. "Don't stop now! We're almost there!" Sarah encouraged her crew. The tide of battle was shifting, and they could feel it. As the flagship struggled to respond, the human fleet pressed on. With each successful strike, the crew felt their spirits lift. They knew they were turning the tide. But the battle was far from over. As they pressed the attack, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the Zari would fight back fiercely. But in that moment, hope surged within her heart. Humanity was showing its true strength, and together they would not back down. The battle had taken a turn, and the human fleet felt a renewed sense of hope. The Zari flagship was in trouble, and Commander Sarah Lee stood at the helm of the USS Valor, determined to seize the moment. But as she looked at the view screen, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Zari were fierce fighters, and they would not give up easily. "Commander, we're making progress. The flagship's shields are weakening," Lieutenant Mark Anderson announced, his voice filled with excitement. The crew cheered, but Sarah remained focused. "Don't let your guard down. They could have hidden weapons or reinforcements," Sarah cautioned, scanning the surrounding area. The dark expanse of space felt eerie, as if it were holding its breath. As they continued their assault, Sarah ordered the fleet to tighten their formation. "We need to protect our flanks. Stay alert for any surprises," she commanded. Her crew nodded, understanding the importance of her words. Suddenly, an alert blared across the bridge. "Commander, we've detected multiple energy signatures approaching fast," Mark shouted, his face turning pale. "From where?" Sarah asked, her heart racing. "From behind the moon. They're coming in hot," Mark replied, his fingers working furiously to analyze the data. "Damn it! It's a trap!" Sarah realized, her mind racing. The Zari flagship had been a diversion, buying time for reinforcements. "All ships, prepare for battle. We need to hold our position." But before they could regroup, a fleet of new Zari ships emerged from behind the moon, their weapons primed and ready. They were sleek and fast, with armor designed for speed and agility. The sight sent chills down Sarah's spine. "Fire at will," Sarah shouted, urgency filling her voice. The human fleet opened fire, but the new ships were too quick, weaving in and out of their line of fire. "Commander, they're flanking us!" an officer yelled. The new Zari ships split the human fleet, making it difficult for them to coordinate their attacks. "Regroup! Focus on one target at a time!" Sarah ordered, determination etched on her face. The crew followed her command, desperately trying to re-establish their formation. As they fought back, Sarah's mind raced. The initial plan was falling apart. They needed to create a barrier to protect the vulnerable ships. "Mark, can we create a shield wall?" she asked, hoping for a solution. "Give me a moment," he replied, fingers flying over the console. "I can try to redirect power to create a temporary shield barrier, but it will drain our energy reserves." "Do it!" "We can't let them overwhelm us," Sarah insisted, knowing the risk. Mark worked quickly, and soon a shimmering barrier appeared in front of the fleet. The human ships huddled behind it, gaining a moment of reprieve. But the Zari ships didn't hesitate. They targeted the shield with renewed vigor, laser blasts hammering against the energy barrier. "Hold strong! We can't let them break through!" Sarah urged her crew, her heart pounding in her chest. The shield flickered as the blasts continued to pound against it. "We're losing power!" "The barrier won't hold much longer," Mark shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Redirect all remaining energy to the shield." "We need to buy more time," Sarah commanded, her eyes fixed on the chaotic battle before her. As the crew worked to fortify their defenses, the Zari ships pressed the attack, taking advantage of the situation. It was a desperate fight, and the air was thick with tension. Suddenly, a bright flash erupted from one of the Zari ships. "Commander, they're deploying a new type of weapon," an officer shouted. "It's a concentrated energy beam." "Brace for impact!" Sarah yelled, knowing they were in grave danger. The energy beam sliced through space, aimed straight at the USS Valor. Time slowed as the beam approached, but Sarah was ready. "Mark, divert all energy to the front shields." "Now!" she commanded. The crew scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The energy beam hit the USS Valor with a deafening roar, and the ship shook violently. Sarah struggled to stay on her feet, her heart racing. "Status report!" she demanded, fear creeping into her voice. "We've taken heavy damage! Shields are failing!" Mark shouted, his face pale. Just then, a loud explosion rocked the ship and the lights flickered. Alarms blared throughout the bridge. "We're losing control!" an officer cried. "Everyone brace for impact!" Sarah yelled, knowing they were in a fight for their lives. As chaos erupted around her, Sarah realized they were facing more than just Zari ships. This was a hidden threat, one that could change the course of the battle. But she would not give up. Humanity had fought too hard, and she would do everything in her power to protect her crew and her home. With determination burning in her heart, Sarah steadied herself, ready to lead her crew through the storm. The USS Valor shuddered under the intense pressure of the energy beam, and Commander Sarah Lee gripped the console tightly. Alarms blared around her, and her crew worked furiously to keep the ship steady. "We can't take much more of this!" Lieutenant Mark Anderson shouted, sweat dripping down his brow. "Redirect power from non-essential systems to the shields," Sarah ordered, her voice strong despite the chaos. "We must hold our position until we can regroup." The crew quickly scrambled to obey, their faces set with determination. Sarah knew they were in a desperate situation, but she refused to let fear take over. They had faced worse challenges before, and she believed in her crew's strength. As the energy beam continued to pound against the Valor, Sarah kept her eyes on the view screen, watching as the Zari fleet surged forward. "We need to strike back," she shouted. "We can't let them dictate the battle." "Commander, our weapon systems are still functional," Mark replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "We can target the ships that are attacking us." "Do it! Target the closest ship and fire," Sarah commanded, her heart racing with adrenaline. The Valor's weapons hummed to life, and the crew focused their fire on the nearest Zari ship. A bright explosion erupted as their lasers struck true, and Sarah felt a surge of hope. "That's it! Keep firing!" she urged her crew. But the Zari were relentless, their ships moving with speed and precision. "They're surrounding us!" an officer yelled. "We can't break through their lines!" Sarah took a deep breath, searching for a solution. "We need to create an opening. Mark, can we use the shield to push them back?" Mark nodded, eyes brightening with determination. "If we concentrate the shield's energy, we can create a temporary shockwave." "Do it!" Sarah shouted. "Everyone brace for impact!" The crew worked quickly, channeling energy into the shields. A tense silence fell over the bridge as they prepared for the shockwave. Sarah could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Now!" she commanded. With a blinding flash, the shields released a powerful wave of energy. The Zari ships closest to the Valor were pushed back, and the human fleet seized the moment. "Advance! Follow me!" Sarah shouted, her voice ringing with authority. The human ships surged forward, creating a path through the enemy lines. "Commander, we've broken through!" Mark cheered, relief flooding his voice. The crew erupted in cheers, hope igniting their spirits. But Sarah knew they weren't out of danger yet. "Stay alert! We need to target the flagship," Sarah ordered. The Zari flagship was still a looming threat, and they needed to finish what they started. As they approached, Sarah noticed something strange. The flagship was not moving as aggressively as before. "What's happening?" she asked, furrowing her brow. "Commander, it looks like they're trying to retreat," an officer exclaimed. "They're signaling for help. Don't let them get away." "We need to finish this," Sarah commanded, her voice firm. The crew rallied behind her, their determination renewed. The Valor and the remaining human ships concentrated their fire on the flagship. Lasers and missiles shot through the void, striking the flagship's hull with devastating force. Explosions rippled across its surface, and the crew of the USS Valor watched in awe as their attacks began to take effect. "Direct hits on the flagship!" Mark shouted, his eyes wide with excitement. "It's losing power! Keep it up! We're almost there!" Sarah urged, her heart racing with adrenaline. They could see the tide turning. With each attack, the Zari flagship staggered, and Sarah felt a wave of hope wash over her. "This is our moment!" she shouted. "For humanity!" As the flagship finally began to crumble, the crew erupted in cheers. But just as victory seemed assured, a message crackled over the comms. "Commander, we're detecting an enormous energy spike from the flagship," an officer warned. "What does that mean?" Sarah asked, fear gripping her heart. "It could be a last-ditch effort. They might be trying to self-destruct," the officer exclaimed. "Everyone, brace for impact! Evacuate the area!" Sarah shouted, urgency coursing through her veins. The crew moved quickly, preparing to retreat from the doomed flagship. The USS Valor pulled back, just as the flagship erupted in a massive explosion, lighting up the darkness of space. "Did we make it?" Mark gasped, staring at the wreckage. "Yes, we did," Sarah replied, a smile breaking through her earlier fear. "We fought hard and we won!" As the crew cheered, Sarah felt a sense of pride swell within her. They had faced incredible odds and emerged victorious. Humanity had proven its strength, and together they had turned the tide. But as the wreckage of the flagship drifted away, Sarah knew they must remain vigilant. The Zari threat may have been diminished, but it was not gone. They would need to stay ready for whatever came next, for the universe was vast, and challenges awaited. But today, they had secured a swift victory, and that was worth celebrating.